Russia and China's once strong relationship is now facing an unexpected rupture. In an astonishing move, Russia has imposed a massive 55% tariff on Chinese goods, a decision that is sending shockwaves through global trade. This is more than just an economic figure. It's a game-changing maneuver that could have far-reaching consequences. So, why would Russia, which has been a close ally to China, take such an aggressive action? And why now? In this video, we'll explore the motivations behind this bold decision, examine its immediate economic impact, and discuss the broader ramifications it could have on the global stage. By the end, you'll have a deeper understanding of the strategic calculations behind this tariff and its potential to reshape geopolitics. As we always say, geopolitics is driven by permanent interests, not permanent friendships. And the evolving dynamics between Russia and China are a perfect example of this. Before we dive into how Russia may cope with this risky move, let's first break down what exactly is happening with these tariffs. A tariff, in simple terms, is a tax on imported goods. In this case, Russia has slapped a 55% tariff on Chinese furniture parts. This tax was triggered by a reclassification of certain furniture parts, sliding rail parts, to a higher category, which attracts a much steeper tariff. What's particularly shocking is that this isn't a blanket tariff. It's been targeted specifically at Chinese imports. Furniture parts from European countries, for example, face tariffs of no more than 10%. Meanwhile, Chinese exporters now face tariffs nearly 6 times that amount. This discrepancy is raising eyebrows and creating concerns over the fairness and consequences of such a decision. But why impose tariffs in the first place? Typically, a country uses tariffs to protect its domestic industries by making imports more expensive and less competitive. For Russia, the 55% tariff is seen as a way to shield its domestic furniture sector. The idea is that by making Chinese parts pricier, local manufacturers will be more competitive, potentially giving a boost to Russia's struggling economy. Now, the timing of this decision is crucial. Russia and China have maintained close economic ties, so this move might seem surprising at first glance. But upon closer examination, there are a few key reasons driving this shift. First, Russia is under significant economic pressure. The country faces over 16,000 sanctions from various nations and organizations, which have already stunted its economic growth by about 5% over the last 2 years. With these mounting challenges, Russia is desperate for ways to stimulate domestic production and revitalize its economy. By imposing this tariff, the Kremlin hopes to incentivize local production, create jobs, and boost economic activity. This tariff is not an isolated incident. Just a few months earlier, in May 2024, Russia started taking steps to protect its automotive industry, which was being affected by a surge in Chinese car imports. By imposing higher utilization fees, essentially a tax on imported cars, Russia made Chinese vehicles more expensive, encouraging Russian consumers to opt for locally made cars. The pattern is clear. Russia is focused on protecting and promoting its domestic industries, and China seems to be in the crossfire. But there's more to this than just economic protectionism. There's a geopolitical dimension at play as well. Trade policies can serve as powerful tools in broader political strategies, and this tariff may be part of Russia's larger effort to renegotiate terms with China or assert its economic sovereignty. Tensions have been brewing between these two giants over various issues, and this tariff could be a strategic move to leverage Russia's bargaining power in those discussions. Let's now look at the immediate economic consequences this tariff will have, starting with Russia. On the plus side, this tariff could give a significant boost to Russia's domestic furniture industry. With Chinese parts now more expensive, local manufacturers may find themselves more competitive, which could lead to higher production, more sales, and possibly more jobs in the sector. This is particularly important, given that Russia's furniture industry has been struggling for years, largely due to a sharp drop in consumer demand, rising inflation, and reduced purchasing power. However, the downsides could be just as impactful. The most immediate concern is the possibility of retaliatory tariffs from China. Trade wars often escalate, with countries imposing tariffs on each other's goods in response. If China decides to retaliate, it could hurt Russian sectors that rely on exports to China, which would be a significant blow, especially considering China's current economic resilience. Additionally, Russian manufacturers that depend on imported Chinese parts could face higher production costs. This could lead to increased prices for consumers and slimmer profit margins for businesses, putting the long-term benefits of this tariff in jeopardy. In conclusion, this tariff marks a significant turning point in the Russia-China relationship, and its implications extend far beyond the immediate impact on the furniture industry. As Russia navigates its economic and geopolitical challenges, this could be the first of many bold moves from the Kremlin. While the tariff could give a temporary boost to Russia's domestic industries, it's likely to have serious consequences both economically and diplomatically in the months and years to come. The future of this relationship is uncertain, and only time will tell whether this tariff is the beginning of a larger shift in global trade dynamics. Some Russian industry leaders are expressing discontent over recent tariff changes. Alex Shestakov, owner of the First Furniture Factory, stated that the tariff imposition could lead to the closure of numerous factories and the loss of thousands of jobs in the coming months. The long-term impact of this decision will depend on how both Russia and China navigate this complex situation. Turning our attention to China, the effects of the tariff are also significant. Chinese exporters, who rely heavily on the Russian market, may face increased production costs, which could lead to a decline in sales and reduced profitability. China's furniture industry, a vital part of the country's economy, is substantial, with an estimated revenue of $88.4 billion in 2024 and expected growth of 7.68% between now and 2029. The 55% tariff imposed by Russia presents a major obstacle, making it more challenging for Chinese businesses to compete. This may lead to production cuts, layoffs, and financial strain, which will be concerning for Beijing, as the industrial sector, which includes furniture manufacturing, accounted for 31.7% of China's GDP in 2023. Additionally, as China is the world's largest furniture producer and exporter, any significant downturn in the industry could affect its global economic standing, potentially provoking a trade conflict between Russia and China. On a grassroots level, the tariff's effects are expected to impact consumers, especially in Russia. With the cost of Chinese furniture components rising, the prices for finished furniture products are likely to increase. This could lead to higher household expenses, reduced consumer spending in other areas, and overall economic strain. Furthermore, the limited availability of affordable imported furniture could force consumers to choose lower quality products or pay a premium for higher quality ones. This highlights the interconnectedness of global trade and its impact on everyday life. In Russia, opinions on the tariff are mixed. Some domestic manufacturers view the tariff as an opportunity to strengthen the local market and reduce reliance on imports. They believe this will give them a competitive advantage. However, others, including business associations, are concerned about the potential long-term effects, including increased production costs and possible retaliation from China. Alexander Shestakov, president of the AMDP, warned that the tariff could lead to bankruptcies among furniture component importers, causing domestic furniture prices to rise by at least 15%. In China, the response has largely been negative, with exporters and industry leaders viewing the tariff as a serious obstacle to their business. Du Juan, a columnist for NetEase News, expressed frustration, suggesting that if this tariff had been imposed by the United States, it would have been condemned as hegemonic behavior. Yet many have remained silent in response to Russia's actions. Calls for government action to protect Chinese interests have intensified, with many businesses viewing Russia's move as a betrayal. Understanding the broader geopolitical context helps explain the tariff's implications. The ongoing trade war between the US and China has disrupted global supply chains, with countries reassessing their trade policies and alliances. Some speculate that Russia's imposition of the tariff may be an attempt to align more closely with the US in an effort to repair its strained relationships with the West. With Russia estimated to be losing $1 billion a day due to sanctions and the ongoing war, the country may be looking to reduce its dependency on any single trade partner, even if it means antagonizing China. As Chinese exporters face the brunt of these tariffs, diversifying their markets becomes essential. Southeast Asia presents a promising alternative, with countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand experiencing economic growth and rising demand for consumer goods, including furniture. Expanding into African markets, which are also undergoing economic growth and urbanization, could provide another avenue for diversification. Strengthening trade relationships with other global economies, such as the European Union or India, could help Chinese businesses mitigate the impact of the tariffs. China's Belt and Road Initiative, launched in 2013 by President Xi Jinping, aims to foster trade connections and infrastructure projects across Asia, Europe, and Africa. By investing in infrastructure and trade links, China hopes to open up new economic opportunities and secure more markets for its products, potentially reducing its reliance on any one market such as Russia. In an era of shifting global power dynamics, China's strategic decisions are being tested like never before. When faced with situations like the imposition of tariffs, it's not just about immediate economic impact, but about ensuring long-term resilience. China's ability to diversify its global partnerships and avoid isolation, especially when allies falter, underscores the foresight of President Xi's policies. By fortifying ties under initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, China is actively securing alternatives to mitigate the potential fallout from trade disruptions, particularly in regions like Africa and Latin America, where demand for Chinese products is on the rise. Despite the inherent challenges of expanding trade into these new markets, the strategic diversification of partnerships offers a buffer against ongoing tariffs and trade disputes. These shifts highlight the importance of broadening alliances, especially as global trade tensions rise. To understand the weight of recent events, we must examine the historical relationship between Russia and China. While trade between the two countries has fluctuated over the decades, it has always been influenced by political currents. In the early 20th century, their economic interactions were limited due to ideological divides. Yet, as both nations underwent monumental changes, particularly post-1949 with the establishment of the People's Republic of China, the trajectory of their economic relationship took shape, with the Soviet Union playing a key role. Through the Cold War, the alliance was complex, initially grounded in shared communist ideologies but quickly marked by competition and rivalry. Yet, trade continued amid these tensions, and both nations have worked to rebuild their economic relationship in the post-Soviet era. Key milestones have helped reinforce their ties, such as the 2001 signing of the Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation. This laid the foundation for long-term economic and political collaboration, establishing principles like mutual respect and non-interference. Over the years, numerous trade agreements and joint ventures in sectors like energy, infrastructure, and manufacturing have reinforced their bilateral ties. Yet as history demonstrates, cooperation between Russia and China has often been punctuated by conflicts. One of the more notable early 2000s disputes arose over tariffs and trade imbalances, with Russia imposing tariffs on Chinese goods over concerns about market fairness. China retaliated, illustrating the volatility of trade relationships even between strategic partners. A later conflict in the mid-2000s saw Russia imposing restrictions on Chinese agricultural imports, citing food safety concerns. These tensions were resolved through diplomatic efforts, but the pattern of Russia initiating tariffs is clear, as is China's retaliatory stance. This sets the stage for the current trade difficulties, especially the recent 55% tariff on Chinese goods, which brings us to a critical point: a trade war. A full-blown trade conflict with China is not a path Russia can afford to pursue. Amid intense international sanctions, Russia's reliance on China has never been stronger. Since the West imposed bans on Russian goods due to the Ukraine conflict, Moscow has sought to cement its economic ties with Beijing, with trade volumes more than doubling since 2020. By 2023, China accounted for about one-third of Russia's total trade, a staggering 19% growth in the value of exports like crude oil and petroleum. China has become Russia's essential partner, providing vital technology and investments. These contributions have proven invaluable, particularly in sectors like semiconductors, where Russia faces shortages due to the bans imposed by the US and other Western nations. Chinese investments have been critical in bolstering Russia's infrastructure, helping to alleviate pressure from the surge in trade and compensating for Russia's increasing isolation from Western markets. In the energy sector, China has ramped up its oil imports from Russia, taking advantage of discounted prices due to sanctions. In 2023, China imported a record 2.1 million barrels per day of Russian crude, marking a significant portion of its total oil imports. This partnership not only strengthens China's energy security, but also provides Russia with crucial revenue during difficult times. What this all reveals is that Russia cannot afford to alienate China at this juncture. Any trade conflict would disproportionately harm Russia's economy, isolating it further from global markets. The recent tariff imposition has already sent shockwaves through Russia's business community, with fears that it could destabilize an already fragile economy. Furthermore, Russia's ongoing struggle with sanctions, coupled with its efforts to build trade relationships with other countries like India and Turkey, hasn't made up for the loss of Western markets. A trade war with China could undermine the progress made in energy, defense, and infrastructure cooperation, areas that have been critical to Russia's survival amid international isolation. Given the stakes, the future of Russia-China relations remains uncertain. Experts disagree on whether tensions will simmer down or escalate. Either way, both countries will likely need to engage in negotiations to resolve the tariff dispute, whether by revising rates, establishing trade quotas, or pursuing joint economic ventures. This situation is a textbook example of the intertwined nature of geopolitics and economics in the 21st century. How Russia and China navigate this delicate moment will determine the future of their partnership and the broader trajectory of global trade. The road ahead for these two nations will require a careful balancing act. Diplomatic efforts, economic strategy, and compromise will be necessary to avoid escalation. As global markets watch closely, The decisions made now could have lasting impacts on international relations. What do you think? How will these new tariffs affect Russia-China relations and the broader global trade landscape? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We value your insights and look forward to continuing the conversation. Stay tuned for more in-depth analysis on global trade, geopolitics, and economic strategies.